Mr. President, for months when you were asked about your age, you would respond with the words, "Watch me." Many American people have been watching, and they have expressed concerns about your age.
That is your judgment. That is your judgment. That is not the judgment of the press.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
You've done all the reading. You're a scholar. You're a professor. You've done all the reading. You've done the intellectual heavy lifting.
More or less, eat shit and die.
You wouldn't know a fact if it begged you all night long.
Want to give the wrong impression because I am very high.
Ran up behind him with a hatchet. Smash, smash, smash.
Yeah. Care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is,
Did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen.
That was the perfect answer. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, to the Libertarian Podcast Review. It's not Kill Tony. It's not Kill Tyler. It's not Kill Podcast. It might be the end of that Kill Pod. That was something else. We'll talk about this. This is episode 148. I hope everyone's having a good Friday night. White Stripes, Seven Nation Army. By the way, Jack Gillis or something like that? He took his wife's name, Meg White, to be the White Stripes. Crazy motherfucker. Talented, but maybe a little bit unconventional. Okay, let's get into. We're going to talk about what we're going to do here today. Let people kind of come in. Oh my God, hi Tyler. JC's here, one and only. Thank you, JC, for showing up. Let's talk real quick. Let's recap last week. First of all, it was bad from start to finish. Andy and I hadn't been gelling. We hadn't really been doing much of communicating, or we text and call each other. But I mean, like on the show. So there was something lacking there. There was the lack of energy. I hadn't done any prep because I'm like, it's Kill Pod. We'll just do this. No one had hardly at all signed up for this thing. And then I had Zach, who's a funny guy, and he seemed to have not really come with the preparation of bringing all the energy and everything. Not his fault necessarily, because the show didn't help him. And so it was a complete disaster. And I was really disappointed. And then my computer shot the shit the bed. And there you go. Could you bump up the audio a bit? If not, no. Good. Thank you. This is what we need from people here. I will, let me go into the edit. Let's see if I can, nope, not there. Settings. We'll do it in the settings. Audio. It's all the way up there. I think my gain's up here. I'll pump it. I'll pump it up higher. See what we can do. Maybe I'll get up closer to the mic like that. Maybe that'll help a little bit as well. Yeah, so we're already starting off bad. Once again, I don't know what the deal is. Maybe I need to reroute all my XLR cables and whatnot. It wasn't a bad show. I couldn't catch it live, but caught the audio recording. Oh, yeah, it was bad. It was bad, JC. I appreciate you catching the audio. Okay, let me catch you up on what's going on. Remember, did the Tom Woods series. I'm still working on a Dave Smith series. My buddy, what's his name? Oh my God, I'm losing my mind here. I'm gonna go here online to Twitter because he just posted out a link of one of my shows. DL Cummings, Liberty Dad. Some issues with Dave Smith there, and he put it because this guy's like, Dave Smith's on record saying getting a woman 12 shots drunk in order to fuck her isn't rape. Folks just decided not to care. People trashing on him. And DL just put, wouldn't care if Dave Smith. Anyway, he posted my breakdown to it, and some people are talking about it, getting some good things. So maybe you are a new person to this show, and you're like, what is going on? It's a complete mess, people. But what we do is we review shows. I'm going through my Dave stuff. JC said, did you finish rewatching Cheers yet? No. I got about 3 or 4 seasons in, and I got distracted. And what I just did was I'm almost done with they call it day 5 of the TV show 24. And everyone's like, what? You mean we're like terrorists and the government? Yeah, Jack just said, by the way, he goes, something about the episode I'm watching today. He's like, the government's all, it's corrupted and no, it's not worth saying. Anyway, and I'm like, yes, if you take it from a different perspective, it's actually not that bad. Everyone in the government is, Jack's this great guy, always trying to do things, but he's always trying to, it's a horrible show for law and order, for civil liberties. It is highly entertaining, and that's what I'm getting at here. Okay, we review podcasts, we review shows, and we interview people, and sometimes I talk about the law, because I am an attorney. I'm a board certified, no, I'm a licensed attorney to practice law in the state of California. So I thought, let me get back here. Tom Woods series, Leo Frank with Pete Q, that's on that's some legal stuff there. That's on our playlist. I've been on Unfit Statesman with Zach Brown. If you liked any of it a little bit, it was much better on his show. I was on episode 2 and 13 with him. We have those Kill Pods, Those Might Be Dead. Check out my Substack. And I'm also producing the Tower Gang. I think it's been going well. It's a lot of work during the show because, they... I don't want to get into too much. And then I have a segment at the end, and I have got zero feedback from anybody. So tell me if it's good or bad. Who is hotter, Rebecca or Diane? Okay. Diane was probably better looking. Rebecca was crazy, and they both annoyed me, honestly. But actually, Diane annoyed me more than Rebecca. Just throwing that out there. That's a cheers thing there. Okay, there you go. That's what we got there. So let's start off with, and I'm going to be doing a breakdown someday, a deep dive into the 14th Amendment. I've got this one book here, Government by Judiciary, Raoul Berger. It's pretty thick, if you can see it. It's a breakdown of the 14th Amendment. I have this little small one by Dave Benner, the 14th Amendment and the Incorporation Doctrine. We'll talk a little bit about that because the 14th Amendment's all in fashion right now. Now, what neither one of those books break down into at all is the Section 3, which is what they're going after Trump about in Colorado, saying you should be kicked off the ballot. And it's pretty interesting. I will read a little bit here from Dave Benner's book. And what happened is there was a thing called the Civil War, took place North and South. And then after the Civil War, the Congress was like, well, let's do something about some of these civil rights. So they came up with the Civil Rights Act of 1866, and it passed. Okay, and it had some language in there, and I could. This is following what it said: to make and enforce contracts, to sue, be parties, and give evidence, to inherit, purchase, lease, sell, hold, and convey real and personal property, and to have full and equal benefit of all laws, proceedings for the security of persons and property as it is enjoyed by white citizens, and shall be subject to like punishments, pains, penalties, and to none and other any law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom to the contrary notwithstanding. Talk about run-on sentences. Okay, so they go ahead, they pass this, and then what the problem really was is it gets passed, but 11 states had still remained unrepresented in Congress. Well, that's a problem, right? So President Andrew Johnson at the time, he vetoes it. While it was vetoed, Congress then decides to successfully override it. So it becomes the bill. Remember, a bill, how does a bill become a law? Well, it became a law on April 9 of 1866. The problem is people were very worried that the Civil Rights Act of 1866 was going to be determined to be not constitutional. So to enact this constitutionality or to constitutionalize this bill, the Republicans decided to draft the Constitutional Amendment to constitutionalize its passage. The decision led to the inception of the 14th Amendment. And there you go. Now, what was interesting about the 14th Amendment, it did multiple things. But when we have the arguments before the Supreme Court this week, which was Trump v. Anderson, I think, that was the state of California. And Anderson, I think, is the Secretary of State or whoever does the electioneering there. That's who he ends up suing to get it up to the Supreme Court. But the case that got there with Colorado, and they said, due to the 14th Amendment, Section 3, you are no longer eligible to be on the ballot. So it gets up to the Supreme Court. Now, what was interesting about, and I listened to the arguments, and I thoroughly believe it's going to be a 9-0. I don't know about 9-0. Kagan and Sotomayor, a little questionable. Sotomayor seems to be the dumbest one on the court. Ketanji Brown Jackson shocked me with her questions, and I very firmly believe that she's going to go with the majority, and it would be fascinating if they had her write the opinion. That would be pretty cool. But she had some really good questions there, and I just don't believe that she's going to go with the state of Colorado and saying that he's ineligible, and they're going to make a ruling on this. But what you got from all the justices and all the attorneys there was two of them, and then there was a third one as well. The state of Colorado, there was Secretary of State of the state of Colorado as well, and then the Trump's attorneys. By the way, I didn't feel Trump's attorneys were, like always, they're not the best. Guy was good, better than me. I'm not going to ever argue for the Supreme Court unless it's something about the history of cycling, especially the 1990s. Whoa, did I just glitch out there? Maybe my internet. So I'm not going to argue before the Supreme Court, and this guy's smarter than me, but he is missing some things, and I didn't like some of the arguments that he was actually making. And it's typical of Trump. Trump gets attorneys based off of, I don't know, something he sees on TV, or she's hot. That's his one civil one there in the state of New York. But what they all agreed, and there were arguments back and forth here. This is the second time I'm glitching down here. I don't know if my internet is having some issues. My son is home. I just checked my streaming and it's good. I don't know how I could continue on when it's the stream is going down. So it's recording locally, and I'll just keep going through it. If it cuts out, then I'll have to re-upload later on. So stick with me if you're getting me cut. I think we've had some problems with the internet last few weeks. They had some really bad weather, and then we had a bunch of outages coming and going. So yeah, JC says I'm freezing every couple of seconds. I don't know. I told my son, I said, are you gaming? The internet's crapping out. So maybe that's the case. And if so, it's what it is. Anyway, you're back. Thank you. So the attorneys of all three, the two and the two on this Colorado side and the one on the Trump side, and the multiple justices, they all concurred that the 14th Amendment was there specifically to restrict the power of the states. Now, look, I just read here, and Republicans decided to draft a constitutional amendment. So once again, when you hear Michael Knowles and all these other ones, and these are incorporationists, and they laud different things, and then the civil rights, the Republicans have always been right from day one type of thing. No, they contributed to this problem because I thoroughly believe. Well, you saw that one. We can get into the history of the Civil War and Lincoln and all that, and whether it was a horrible situation for the South as far as they had a right to secede, and they did, and he trampled on their and suspended habeas corpus, all of that. And the GOP then comes in. Now they're doing the right thing for the right reasons and all that. But they've ruined. I think they've really done a disservice to our country by passing this 14th Amendment and what's gone on. And one day soon we will do a whole thing on the 14th Amendment, substantive due process, and how those two work together, and the incorporation document. Anyway, what my point on this was that the 14th Amendment was done specifically to restrict the state's power. Now you're using this 14th Amendment to try to kick Trump out of, not even let him take office. So we'll go here real quickly, and I'm going to play a few clips from the Supreme Court stuff, but let's at least take a look at Section 3, which is the one. And maybe you guys have heard about this, but we're going to go over this on kind of a real top level, not deep, because I'm not super deep on a lot of this anyway. So, but here's where we are. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or any executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same and given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. Now, look, it does mention president or vice president, but it says elector. Okay, so you're talking about the electors in the states here. So the point is, in Ketanji Brown Jackson, Justice of the Supreme Court, she kept harping on this of like, okay, look, it doesn't mention anything in here about the president. Now it says electors, and the attorney for the state of Colorado is like, look, he's like, but when you look at the context back and forth, one of the guys did bring that up. Look, the president isn't listed. And the answer was, oh no, he is listed because officers or whatever this, but they didn't include him. And she's like, well, it seems to me that they brought up an ambiguity, okay, which is, was he listed or was he not? Now they seem to have thought, at least this one person seemed to have said that it was resolved, but her point is it's ambiguity. And if you're listing everybody, why wouldn't you, I mean, literally, why would you not list the president or the vice president? You list the electors to them, you use those words. And so if you're doing so anyway, that's the Section 3 in remember, it's after the Civil War. The states now are trying to, the federal government is trying to restrict the states in some of their power. And it's also trying to give due process, which we've talked about with the 14th Amendment, other clauses here, equal protection as well. But this was one about insurrection. So, blah, blah, blah. Now, it would be great if I had cut up a bunch of clips for this. I thought I would just play the opening portion for the Trump's attorney, and it would but just audio. But CBS has a little picture here we can look through. So let's play at least the little bit of the audio.
If it chooses to enact legislation, the holding of Griffin's case.
It's already in here a few minutes. So we've got to go back to about 11 minutes into this thing. And here we go.
Covered by Section 3.
Robert, let me go to the court now. Chief Justice John Roberts is beginning the arguments. Let us listen.
Go, buddy.
Independent reasons.
Whispering. That's great.
The first reason is that President Trump is not covered by Section 3 because the president is not an officer of the United States, as that term is used throughout the Constitution. Officer of the United States refers only to appointed officials, and it does not encompass elected individuals, such as the president or members of Congress. This is clear from the Commissions Clause, the Impeachment Clause, and the Appointments Clause, each of which uses officers of the United States to refer only to appointed and not elected officials. The second reason is that Section 3 cannot be used to exclude a presidential candidate from the ballot, even if that candidate is disqualified from serving as president under Section 3, because Congress can lift that disability after the candidate is elected, but before he takes office. A state cannot exclude any candidate for federal office from the ballot on account of Section 3, and any state that does so is violating the holding of term limits by altering the Constitution's qualifications for federal office. The Colorado Supreme Court's decision is no different from a state residency law that requires members of Congress to inhabit the state prior to Election Day, when the Constitution requires only that members of Congress inhabit the state that they represent when elected. In both situations, a state is accelerating the deadline to meet a constitutionally imposed qualification and is thereby violating the holding of term limits. And in this situation, a ruling from this court that affirms the decision below would not only violate term limits, but take away the votes of potentially tens of millions of Americans. I welcome the court's questions.
Mr. Mitchell, would you,
Justice Thomas?
You didn't spend much time on your argument with respect to whether or not Section 3 is self-executing. So would you address that? And in doing that, your argument is that it's not self-executing, but then in that case, what would the role of the state be? Or is it entirely up to Congress to implement the disqualification in Section 3?
It is entirely up to Congress, Justice Thomas, and our argument goes beyond actually saying that Section 3 is non-self-executing. We need to say something more than that, because a non-self-executing treaty or a non-self-executing constitutional provision normally can still be enforced by a state if it chooses to enact legislation. The holding of Griffin's case goes beyond even that by saying that a state is not allowed to implement or enforce Section 3 of the 14th Amendment unless and until Congress enacts implementing legislation allowing it to do so.
Okay, I'm going to stop there and I just wanted to give you an idea, kind of the original, the starting arguments that he's making, and they're very brief because they've done all their briefing to the court. So, and it would have been good if I would have cut some of this out, but we've got two other topics to cover here, so we'll be plenty good on time. What was self-executing is basically a law or statute that itself is there's not something that is precipitative for it to be enacted. It's just there, shall not do X, Y, and Z. And there's some arguments that they make around that portion, but a lot of it, and what was frustrating with this, and it was like Amy Coney Barrett comes in there and she's like, what about a constitutional argument? Do you have? And he pretty much says, no, I don't really have one. We have these other eliminating issues that I think are more important. And I was just like, dude, you're messing it up. Anyway, it was fascinating to listen to. Like I said, Ketanji Brown Jackson actually was more impressive to me, only because I thought that she was not taking it. And I'm going to read an article. Let's do this here real quick. 5 takeaways from the Supreme Court argument. Here we go. All 6 conservative justices aggressively questioned the arguments that the state of Colorado had been right in determining that Trump had been barred from appearing as a candidate under Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution's 14th Amendment. 2 of the 3 liberal justices asked pointed questions as well, an indication that there may be broad consensus to strike down the ruling. Yeah, no shit. Even the liberal justices seemed skeptical of Colorado's ruling. Liberal Justice Elena Kagan told Jason Murray, the attorney representing the Coloradans who had sued to remove Trump from their state's ballot, that disqualifying a president for insurrection sounds awfully national to me, and said that the idea that one state could disqualify a candidate and possibly tip a national election was extraordinary. Liberal Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson seemed deeply wary of Murray's arguments that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment applies to precedents, pointing out that the clause itself lists out the offices but not the presidency. Why didn't they put the word president in very enumerated list in Section 3? The thing that really is troubling to me is I totally understand your argument, but they are listing people that were barred, and president is not there, she said during the questioning of Murray. And so I guess that just makes me worry that maybe they aren't focusing on the president. And by the way, some of that argument has to do with the fact of, okay, so you had this insurrection. Now they don't want insurrectionists coming and infiltrating and forming the government. But what if you want to elect, what if the whole country wants to elect an insurrectionist? Then, you know what? I'm sorry, it's the whole fucking country and we have a chance to do it. We're going to do it. This is exactly the fear that Israel has of giving citizenship to those in Gaza, is they can't have their ethno state. Okay, yeah. I still think she sucks, says J4. Absolutely, but I wouldn't say exactly. I hope if you're talking about Ketanji Brown Jackson, she's not the worst. What's a woman? I don't know. That was pretty stupid. Okay, especially when you've got to make judgment calls on things of Civil Rights Act, of gender. Anyway, we don't want to go there. There was almost no discussion or debate over whether Trump himself actually committed insurrection. Right? Because there was some, and it was pretty much like, what's your standard for this? Okay, well, the Colorado judge is like, well, we had an expert. Well, you know what that expert did? He went through, he didn't talk to anybody. He went through texts and he said, you know what? I think people seeing this text, this is what they would have thought. But he didn't talk to anybody to actually see what they did think. So it was pretty shitty. 3, the justices seemed to agree that states could not act without action from Congress. Several justices seemed ready to embrace the argument that states could not unilaterally decide to remove a candidate from the ballot for insurrection, and questioned why a state should act when federal insurrection charges hadn't been brought. Congress has the authority here, not the states, Kavanaugh said to one point. He suggested that Section 3 had not been used for more than 150 years based on the historical understanding that an act of Congress was required. And by the way, if Congress wants to act and do something, they certainly can, but they haven't. President Trump has not been charged with that. So what are we to make of that? He asked. Kavanaugh talked about, what was that? I don't know what, insurrection. If the concern you have here, which I understand, is that insurrectionists should not be able to hold federal office, there is a tool to ensure that does not happen, namely federal prosecution of insurrectionists. There's an actual statute. You can, section USC 2883 or something like that. Maybe they'll list it in here. And there is specific where you can take action against a federal employee about insurrection, which was not done. It was through the impeachment process, which was crazy. And Justice is worried about retaliatory actions. Roberts asked Murray about the big plain consequences of your position and risk of retaliation from Republicans who might move to kick Biden off the ballot in the states they control. If Colorado's position is upheld, surely there will be disqualification proceedings on the other side, and some of those will succeed, he warned. In a very quick order, I would expect, although my predictions would never have been correct, I would expect that a goodly number of states will say, whomever the Democrat candidate is, you're off the ballot, and others, for a Republican candidate, you're off the ballot. It will come down to just a handful of states that are going to decide the presidential election. That's a pretty daunting consequence. Yeah, and except for you're assuming that the Republican states have balls to do anything, and we see they typically don't. Trump responded with glee. Okay, big deal, what Trump said. He doesn't help himself out. I would just say that. I did want to get to, let's do one article here. This is Ilya Salmon. Now, if you see our opening, the guy, you're an expert, and he has the libertarian case for COVID. Yeah, this is that guy, okay? But he writes for Volok Conspiracy. He's a professor at George Mason Law. Let's see if he talks about anything in here. You know, they didn't really talk about whether January 6th attack on the Capitol was an insurrection. I will say Trump's attorney at least said, we've never agreed that the facts that it was an insurrection. We've always said it was a riot, and a riot is not an insurrection, which was good point. Both liberal and conservative justices repeatedly raised questions about whether letting states enforce Section 3 would lead to a lack of uniformity and whether states could abuse their authority by trying to disqualify people for political reasons. Given the extensive focus on this issue and the relative neglect of others, there's a good chance a court will overrule Colorado's decision on that basis. Strikingly, the question focused more on a pragmatic concerns about chaos and abuse than on traditional legal issues about text structure and original meaning. I wouldn't say more. I mean, they talked about that some, but you know, you've got to, and the problem there, they're basically saying one state is making decisions for the nation. Okay. And that does not seem appropriate. And that's really what they're saying. What else did this loser say here? Courts in different states could also potentially reach divergent conclusions about factual issues, whether a particular person was involved in the insurrection or not. But that's a problem that can arise in any adjudication of candidate qualifications. Thus, no one doubts that state courts can adjudicate whether a candidate for president meets the requirements that he be 35, a natural-born citizen. Yes, but if, for example, there's a factual dispute about the validity or accuracy of the candidate's birth certificate, recall birthrist claims that Barack Obama wasn't born in the United States. Here, that was Trump. Courts in different states could potentially reach divergent factual conclusions. That's just showing how different states have different situations there, which could be. Oh, here we go. At one point, Justice Kavanaugh suggested that 18 U.S.C. Section 2383, the federal criminal insurrection law, qualifies as an exclusive enforcement statute for reasons explained in part in his own amicus brief. That simply isn't true. Why? Okay, he doesn't. I guess I'd have to go see that. In addition, requiring a criminal conviction for insurrection will make enforcement impossible in situations where getting one is difficult or impossible. Blah, blah, blah. I think I'm done with you, Elian Simone. We're going to move on from there. So I think you're going to get an outcome that is going to be beneficial to Trump in this case. but he's still got a lot of other issues. And that one that we have of like immunity during his presidency, and if that extends out afterwards, that will be an issue that I think the Supreme Court is going to have to take. Will they take that in time or not? I don't know. Okay, let's see else what JC and the other southern ones are saying here. Does it seem like the Democratic regime has really been unraveling over the past few weeks? I don't know. Any more so than normal? I don't know about that. A lot of people are predicting that the Peter Thiel big tech cabal will take over soon, and that they're already well underway. We'll be screwed regardless. Yeah, I don't know. He did help Hulk Hogan, right? He's done the intellectual heavy lifting. Yes, that's the one. Thank you. Hello, how are you doing? Well, thanks for joining us on, what's this, Fatamabula? I don't know, on X. Okay, thanks for coming along. Okay, so let's move from there. And we got Trump. We've got some of this good argument. I am thoroughly enjoyed the arguments in the Supreme Court. There was some good stuff there, all in all. But then we had an issue where we had this guy, Putin. Okay, he's the dictator of, what do you call it? Russia. And our boy Tucker Carlson went there and interviewed him. Now, I'm going to play this. This is a post. I would suggest you go and check it out, and I'll make some comments about it. And we'll play a few little clips. Maybe let's do this, actually. Let me start with a few of the clips that we had here, short ones. Started talking about NATO. Now, this was an interesting interview, I felt. One, as probably most of you have heard, Putin starts off with saying, "Hey, let me just give you 30 seconds here. I want to talk to you about something." And he goes on for like 30 minutes, and it was a historical thing. And it's interesting to have a juxtaposition between him, same day, Biden talking, and then just thinking about Trump in general. And could any of them have had this recall? We just talked about the Civil War and 1866 Civil Rights Act and whatnot. I would say hardly any of these guys that have run for president could spit out any of this stuff. Nikki Haley, her whole one thing was like, not slavery, which technically not wrong. Okay, let's go here. I'm putting on 1.25. He asked a question about NATO.
NATO is worried about this becoming a global war or a nuclear conflict?
At least that's what they're talking about. And they're trying to intimidate their own population with an imaginary Russian threat. This is an obvious fact. And thinking people, not Philistines, but thinking people, analysts, those who are engaged in real politics, just smart people, understand perfectly well that this is a fake. They're trying to fuel the Russian threat.
The threat I think you're referring to is a Russian invasion of Poland, Latvia, expansionist behavior. Can you imagine a scenario where you sent Russian troops to Poland?
Only in one case, if Poland attacks Russia. Why? Because we have no interest in Poland, Latvia, or anywhere else. Why would we do that? We simply don't have any interest. It's just threat mongering.
Well, the argument, I know you know this, is that, well, he invaded Ukraine. He has territorial aims across the continent. And you're saying unequivocally you don't.
It is absolutely out of the question. You just don't have to be any kind of analyst. It goes against common sense to get involved in some kind of a global war. And a global war will bring all humanity to the brink of destruction. It's obvious. There are certainly means of deterrence. They have been scaring everyone with us all along. Tomorrow Russia will use tactical nuclear weapons. Tomorrow Russia will use that. No, the day after tomorrow. So what? In order to extort additional money from US taxpayers and European taxpayers in the confrontation with Russia in the Ukrainian theater of war. The goal is to weaken Russia as much as possible.
Interesting. Now look, this is Putin. He's a former KGB officer. So I'm not Toad, who in the Telegram chat is like, he's based. And I'm like, okay, look, you didn't like anything that Malay said, and you like everything that Putin is saying. Well, as we started the show here, and hi Patrick, by the way, thanks for joining us in here. As we said here at the beginning, we played a clip of Biden, and I could play it again here if need be, where he's like, I'm not demented. I said, watch me, see what I do. Yes, we'll see. Well, look, I'm not a fan of Putin necessarily at all. But it's an interesting thing what he's saying, and there was a lot of things, like there was a lot of anti-American or pushing back, and it was fascinating because I did watch Dave Smith went on Clint Russell's show, and I'm like, Putin is saying exactly what Dave has said Putin has been thinking this whole time. That was what was fascinating. Okay. I don't think it's Putin's now like taking the talking points that everyone says he is, or the Dave's taking talking points of Russia. It's just that you're out there listening, and you got to, we'll play the Nord Stream pipeline question, because I think that one actually, we're going to play two more clips here, because the Nord Stream pipeline question is fascinating simply for the fact that why would you say that Russia did this in the first place? That's my question. So, okay, this is another one about US dollar. Let's go. This one has a
foreign policy struggle is one of the biggest strategic mistakes made by the US political leadership. The dollar is the cornerstone of the United States power, but they won't stop printing. What does the debt of $33 trillion tell us about? As soon as the political leadership decided to use the US dollar as a tool of political struggle, a blow was dealt to this American power. I would not like to use any strong language, but it is a stupid thing to do and a grave mistake. Look at what is going on in the world. Even the United States allies are now downsizing their dollar reserves. Seeing this, everyone starts looking for ways to protect themselves. But the fact that the United States applies restrictive measures to certain countries, such as placing restrictions on transactions, freezing assets, etc., causes grave concern and sends a signal to the whole world. Do you even realize what is going on or not? Does anyone in the United States realize this? What are you doing? You are cutting yourself off. All experts say this. Ask any intelligent and thinking person in the United States what the dollar means for the US. You're killing it with your own hands.
That is fascinating, because that's a guy that seems to understand economics much. Like, look, you look back in the day in there, what do they call that? I'm trying to remember what it was. Mises had the idea that the Soviet Union, in Rothbard, that the Soviet Union would fail, and the reason being because the economic calculation issue. They did not understand that. This is not a guy, and I remember when he kind of ripped on Bush, by the way, a few times. He ripped on Clinton a bit. A little bit. Trump, he was okay with. But what was interesting, I remember back in the day when, the whole Soviet Union falls, now Bush is in there and he's the new president. I think came in 2019, 2020. I'm sorry, 2000 or 1999, 2000, somewhere around there. So he's been in them for quite a while, but he got Ayn Rand's book, Atlas Shrugged, and he was talking about that. And then I was like, that just kind of blows my mind. But at least, look, if you're going to be, even if a dominating dictator, if you understand economics and how it works in world politics, you're going to be far above and beyond. It's talking about our country just pumping out money. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm like, yeah, I agree. So Patrick says, Malay, better than 1,000 Putins and better than Biden. Yeah, I agree. No fault on that one. Although some people would have a problem with you saying that Putin is better than Biden. Smarter. Okay, so let's talk about this one. This is Nord Stream. And I was wondering if he was going to ask him about this, him being Tucker Carlson, because I thought this would be a very important question. And, there was a bunch of questions of Tucker himself going in there if he's going to be, just an apologist. And I'll talk to you about what I think about his interview itself. But let's play this 2-minute clip here on the Nord Stream.
Who blew up Nord Stream?
Nord Stream, sorry.
You for sure.
I was busy that day. Nate, do you have? I did not blow up Nord Stream. Thank you, though.
You personally may have an alibi, but the CIA has no such alibi.
Do you have evidence that NATO or the CIA did it?
I won't get into details, but people always say in such cases, look for someone who is interested. But in this case, we should not only look for someone who is interested, but also for someone who has capabilities. Because there may be many people interested, but not all of them are capable of sinking to the bottom of the Baltic Sea and carrying out this explosion. These two components should be connected. Who is interested and who is capable of doing it.
But I'm confused. I mean, that's the biggest act of industrial terrorism ever. And it's the largest emission of CO2 in history. Okay, so if you had evidence, and presumably given your security services, your intel services, you would, that NATO, the US, CIA, the West did this, why wouldn't you present it and win a propaganda victory?
In the war of propaganda, it is very difficult to defeat the United States.
Wow.
Because the United States controls all the world's media and many European media. The ultimate beneficiary of the biggest European media are American financial institutions. Don't you know that? So it is possible to get involved in this work, but it is cost prohibitive, so to speak. We can simply shine the spotlight on our sources of information, and we will not achieve results. It is clear to the whole world what happened, and even American analysts talk about it directly.
Very true. Crazy. I mean, let's get some details on the Nord Stream pipeline. Why do they say Nordstrom? I don't understand. Okay, I thought I would do this one thing. This is Tucker. You know what? Let's not, because it's 9 minutes, and we've got a lot of Biden stuff to talk about. So when you watch this interview, and you can see he's a lucid man. He talks. By the way, he said during the interview, the interview is happening in the Kremlin. Matter of fact, at one point he talks about Condoleezza Rice being there. He's like, this table. He sat, and now the interpreter said sat on the table. And I was like, really? Was Condoleezza like sitting there, legs crossed, maybe splayed a little bit, sitting on the table? What actually happened on this table? Point being, he's in the Kremlin. He's in their place, and he's given this interview. And I thought that would be a very intimidating. Look, someone comes on my show, even Steve Poitkin come on last week, and I was interviewing him and talking, and I was kind of, gloating over the fact that he's great and he's got a great encyclopedic mind, kind of like Scott Horton on many issues. And I disagree with him on some things. I didn't really push back. Same with Pete Quinones, because I liked them personally, and I didn't really feel like it was a necessity to have this confrontational conversation, which makes me respect Dave Smith as an example, going against RFK on his own show a few weeks ago, which I thought was great. Without divulging too much, with DMs, Dave's like, was I too emotional about this? And my point on the emotion is, it's not a problem having emotion, especially like in court. It actually can be very persuasive as long as you're not sacrificing it to reason. So you've always, sometimes you're arguing with, let's say, a woman, and they're too emotional, or guys did this too, and it doesn't help them with their points or get it, but you can be emotional in the way you present and being passionate. So maybe it's passionate a little bit, but as long as you're able to rein in some of that emotion and you're still able to give your reason, that is important. So anyway, the point is, Dave had this interview, and I was really proud of, he kind of took on someone that he respects a lot and kind of took him off at the knees in a way, but he was only doing it by just asking him simple questions, and Biden just killed him. I mean, RFK Jr. just killed himself all by himself. But Tucker's going into the belly of the beast here. And, this isn't a live recording. I mean, if something happens, Putin could just come across the table and have him taken away. Now, it's not a good media propaganda issue to kidnap him, but Tucker did bring up some points that I thought were good and pushed back on him, tried to get this release of this journalist, even said, how about we take him home? And made Putin, he pushed him for that for like 15 minutes. It was really a back and forth. And I thought that was good. And it was very, people don't understand. I'm just saying, it's probably not easy to do that in that situation. So I give him kudos for that. Now, you take that away, and now let's go to Biden has a press conference. We're going to play this press conference here. Oops. What happened here? Okay. I think we're going to play the whole thing. It's like, there was a report. Now, maybe that's what I should do first of all, is look at this. Let's do this here. There was a report that came out, and it was about the from the DOJ, and we're going to pull it up here and screen share this report, and I'm going to do keyword searches. Okay, we got to look. Another comment. $5 said Tucker handled everything really well. He was firm but respectful. By the way, you can't, and I'm just saying here is, you can't go into a place like that and expect him to be, just all up in it, because you're in the fucking Kremlin and Russia and all this. And so you look at what happened afterwards. The EU is saying he can't travel here and whatnot. So that was, it's a tough thing to do. I mean, it's not like Putin came to his studio. Then, do what you can. Okay. So this is a DOJ. Now, remember, Trump's Mar-a-Lago was raided, and they took documents, and they said they were secret, whatever, and that they're pushing forward on this. Then it came out that Biden had done similar and had in his old Corvette in his garage secret documents, and everyone's like, what? So there's excuses for Trump, there's excuses for Biden, but what happened is Attorney Garland, I don't know if he did, but this is a letter to him from this guy Huff, and it's a special DOJ report, special counsel that did an investigation into Biden. Okay, and they basically came out and said, look, we're not gonna prosecute him. We're not gonna do this. But the reason is he's an old doddering man, and since he's too old, his memory's fucked, and since that's the case, we just don't. Now, I personally, and we'll get into what incompetency is from a legal perspective, I don't think that's the way to go. I mean, okay, so Grandpa runs someone down. It's a little bit different than, was it negligent or was it a crime? See, that's the thing. Grandpa goes in and shoots up a liquor store. Okay, or steals something that he's not supposed to have. These are supposed to be, big issue that they're going to take down Trump for doing the same thing. Okay, so it's not just him jaywalking; it's a big issue. Grandpa goes and does that, and you find out you're going to start to prosecute him, and he's got dementia. When you go, what are you going to do? What is the court going to do? Did they just go, well, I saw a thing with Tim Pool today. And he was talking about this, and he's like, look, when I was a kid, there was this story, and this old man runs this girl down that was in our school. He goes, this is the way the story was told, runs her down, and he runs her over with her car, and then he backs up with her and smashes her head. And they took his license. That's all they could do. And I'm like, he goes, I don't know if that's a reality. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's really what the deal was. But let's talk about, what can actually happen. So first thing I would do is we'll look at this report, and I'm going to go through, all I'm doing, because it's 388 pages. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But what I'm going to do is I did Control F, the word memory, and I'm just going to go here and read some of this stuff. Okay. Several defenses are likely to create reasonable doubt as to such charges, whatever the charges they were going to bring against Biden. For example, Mr. Biden could have found the classified Afghanistan documents at his Virginia home in 2017 and then forgotten about them soon after. This could convince a reasonable jurors that he did not retain them willfully. When Mr. Biden told his ghostwriter about finding, quote, all the classified stuff downstairs, his tone was matter of fact. For a person who had viewed classified documents nearly every day for 8 years as vice president, including regularly in his home, finding classified documents at home less than a month after leaving office could have been an unremarkable and forgettable event. Notably, the classified Afghanistan documents did not come up again in Mr. Biden's dozens of hours of recorded conversations with the ghostwriter or in his book. And the place where Afghanistan documents were eventually found in Mr. Biden's Delaware garage, in a badly damaged box surrounded by household detritus, suggests that the documents might have been forgotten. First mention of memory coming up right now. In addition, Mr. Biden's memory was significantly limited, both during his recorded interviews with the ghostwriter in 2017 and his interview with our office in 2023. Now, note that's 2017. His ghostwriter is like, fuck. And his cooperation with our investigation, included by reporting to the government that the Afghanistan documents were in his Delaware garage, will likely convince some jurors that he made an innocent mistake rather than acting willfully. That is, with the intent to break the law, as the statute requires. Intent. So this is not, we've talked about these kind of things before, and think back of Hillary Clinton. They let her off of taking secret stuff on her separate server and having an email address. That wasn't an intent crime so much as, I think it was more like strict liability, which is you just did it, you weren't supposed to. So there's no, and by the way, she would have had to have intended to do this, so the intent goes to that. This is an intent crime, so to speak. So you have to have what's called mens rea, the mental reasoning of, I'm going to take this and keep this. Okay, so that's the first mention of memory. And by the way, I would suggest you read through all this. Second one on page 10, it says, we also considered that at trial, Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury. And as he did during our interview of him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. Based on direct interactions with and observations of him, he is someone with whom many jurors will want to identify reasonable doubt. It would be difficult to convince a jury that they should convict him, and by then a former president well into his 80s, of a serious felony that requires a mental state of willfulness. And I'm going to come back to, well, let's just talk about it now in case I forget, which is, this is bullshit. You are going to have his bad memory. He presents himself great to a jury. Fine. But at the time the crime was committed, was there an intent to do so? Yes. He took them home. Was he supposed to? No. Are you saying now that he's forgotten, he's forgiven? That's what they're literally saying. And that is not wrong. And you could say, look, it's going to be hard to maybe convict him now because his memory's poor. But what you can produce evidence of is, here's a document in his house taken at the time that he was vice president. He was out of office at what date? 2016? Okay. Well, you know what? Was he mentally incapacitated then? Of course, he's Joe Biden, but maybe not legally. Okay, I'm going to go through just a few more of these memory situations. McGill said that in his interview with our office that he had no memory of giving. Okay, that's not with Biden. Mr. Biden's memory also appeared to have significant limitations, both at the time he spoke to Zwanitzer in 2017, as evidenced by the recording, that's a biographer, I think, ghostwriter, and today, as evidenced by his recorded interview with our office. Mr. Biden's recorded conversations with Zwanitzer from 2017 and often are painfully slow. And with Mr. Biden struggling to remember events and straining at times to read and relay his own notebook. By the way, this was not reported that I heard. We've talked to him. He's got bad memory. He doesn't remember his son, that he was vice president. No, this is back in 2017. And by the way, this is my problem with him running and people having sympathy. Oh, he's an old man. He's lost his step. He's no longer able to drive to the hoop like he once was, or to do that low post move. No, this is a motherfucker who was out of his mind when he ran for president, and his family, the press, DNC, all pushed for him. And so they can go fuck themselves if they want any kind of sympathy right now. Okay. I would not put my father-in-law, who's now deceased, I wouldn't put my parents. My dad's going to be 83 tomorrow. I think it is. I'm going to look because my calendar's over here. 83 tomorrow. And great. His mind's still there. He still can give you the 440 speed of any player on the 49ers. Go 49ers. But he should not be president. Just throwing that out there. Okay. In the interview with our office, Mr. Biden's memory was worse. He did not remember when he was vice president, forgetting on the first day of the interview when his term ended, if it was 2013, when did I stop being vice president? ? And forgetting on the second day of the interview when his term began in 2009, am I still vice president? Did he not remember even within several years with his son Beau died, and his memory, who he killed, by the way, of sending him to war, and then that's a problem. And did not remember within several years when his son Beau died, and his memory appeared hazy when describing the Afghanistan debate that he was once so important to him. Among other things, he mistakenly said he, quote, had a real difference of opinion with General Carl Eikenberry, when in fact Eikenberry was an ally whom Mr. Biden cited approvingly in his Thanksgiving memo to President Obama. Eikenberry, he's probably like, isn't that was that cartoon I used to watch? Eikenberry, yeah, that's the guy. Okay, so you've got an understanding of this DOJ report here, and then Biden comes out and he decides, you know what, fuck you all, I'm gonna let's do this here. First of all, competency to stand trial, and what typically happens. What does it mean to competent to stand trial? Competency means the defendant must understand all the following: the fact they are in court, a general nature of charges against them, factual understanding of the proceedings, and reasonable degree of rational understanding. The parties involved, including the judge, the defense counsel, and jury, and in the criminal proceedings, and the fact that they have sufficient present ability to assist in the ultimate defense presented. An accused is considered mentally incompetent if either of the following is true. 1, the accused is unable to understand what is going on in trial and why, or the defendant is unable to assist their lawyer in a rational manner. Now, look, we talked about, my wife and I think it was episode 120 something, we did this case on Miss Shabusiness, okay? And she was definitely, the trial was basically over. She was guilty. I think she pled guilty, but then it was like, okay, is she insanity? Now, insanity is a defense, okay? Insanity is a defense to you're being, to whatever the crime that is here. competency is not a defense. It's a right protected by the Sixth Amendment. Your right to trial, a fair and steady. It's fair and whatever trial. Do I have it listed here? Let's see if I can find what the Sixth Amendment even says. Okay, and while do I have it here? I thought I had looked it up. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, you have this right protected under the restriction of the government, but a right under the Sixth Amendment. And what that means is, you go to court, and you're like, okay, we have to see if this person is competent to stand trial. Let's figure this out first. If it's determined competent, you go on with trial. If you're not determined to be competent, they put you in, remand you to some sort of psychological facility until you can get, in such case, you're okay. So they're not saying that. They're like, look, and by the way, we've had this before. You present, okay, you're going to have a case. Is this party going to be a good candidate for a witness? Do they present well, the facts and all this stuff? You got to do that assessment, which it looks like here they did. And they're like, I'm sorry, he's going to be way too favorable to his own, to innocence for us to even do this. That's such bullshit. I'm just kind of giving you a kind of a legal idea here of what this is happening. So they're going about it the wrong way as far as being able to say, should we even bring this to trial? And I think that's bullshit. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to put, this is 8 minutes. Here's the actual, now look, this was happening right around the same time that Putin was giving his testimony to Tucker Carlson, his historical rendition of the Crimea, the Ukraine province, and Russia from like 800 AD, or 800 AD onward. It was crazy, and this is the juxtaposition of what you have for American.
And I'll take some questions.
President Biden, something the special counsel said in his report is that one of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president. I put this country back on its feet. I don't need his recommendation. It's
How
totally
bad is your memory, and can you continue as president?
My memory is so bad, I let you speak. That's
Your memory has gotten worse, Mr. President.
My memory is not good. My memory is fine. My memory, take a look at what I've done since I've become president. None of you thought I could pass any of the things I got passed. How'd that happen?
What's that have to do with your memory?
I guess I just forgot.
This is how bad he is.
Mr. President.
Voters have
What's he
concerns
flipping
about
through?
your age. How are you going to assuage them? And do you fear that this report is only going to fuel further concerns about your age?
Only by some of you.
Mr. President, clear up criminal liability today. Do you take responsibility for at least being careless with classified material?
I take responsibility for not having seen exactly what my staff was doing. It goes in and points out things that appeared in my garage, things that came out of my home, things that were moved not by me but my staff.
Okay, so this is back up just a little bit, because this is fascinating. Which is, his argument is, look, you should prosecute me because my memory is fucking on point, and I'm with it. I could tap dance right here if I needed to, and by showing you I could tap dance means I have a great memory. That's not true. But anyway, that's what he's saying. Then he's saying, look, I'm so incompetent as a leader that I couldn't control what my staff is doing. I may be negligent in that sense. So you shouldn't do that. It's bizarre to me. But anyway, let's keep going.
But my staff.
Mr. President, for months when you were asked about your age, you would respond with the words, watch me. Many American people have been watching, and they have expressed concerns about your age.
That is your judgment. That is your judgment. That is not the judgment of the press.
They express concerns about your mental acuity. They say that...
Okay, I'm sorry to chime in here. First of all, she said, the people have said this, and he said, that's your judgment. That's not the judgment of the press. We're talking about the people. So once again, he confuses these words because he's old. Okay, let's just be honest. But if you do look back and you watch old clips of old Joe Biden, by the way, I remember this when Obama, he was running for president. I think back then, old Joe, when Obama, I know he's vice president. I guess he was vice president, but I think it was the first time. I don't know. He was running for president way long ago. I want to say 2010, 2012. And he was known as Gaff, Joe Biden Gaff man. I mean, he's just always been this kind of doddering idiot. Anyway, let's keep going here.
You are too old. Mr. President, in December, you told me that you believe there are many other Democrats who could defeat Donald Trump. So why does it have to be you now? What is your answer to that question?
Because I'm the most qualified person in this country to be president of the United States and finish the job I started.
By the way, I'm at 1.25 speed, so when he talks fast and you're like, wow, no, he's not. It's sped up. It's AI right now.
Why are you confusing the names of world leaders?
Thank you, everyone. I did not share classified information. I did not share it. With your ghostwriter? With my ghostwriter, I did not. Guarantee you did not.
But the special counsel said...
Well, no, I did not say that.
Okay.
He did not say that.
But Mr. President,
let me answer your question.
That's not what we just read that about.
The fact of the matter is, what I didn't want repeated, I didn't want him to know, and I didn't read it to him, was I had written a long memorandum to President Obama why we should not be in Afghanistan. And I was of multiple pages. And so what I was referring to, I said classified. I should have said should be private because it was a contact between the president and the vice president as to what was going on. That's what he was referring to. It was not classified information in that document. That was not classified.
Please hold on me. When you look back at this incident, is there anything you would do differently now? And do you think that a special prosecutor should have been appointed in the first place in both of these cases?
First of all, what I would have done is oversee the transfer of the material that was in my office, in my offices. I should have done that. If I go back, I didn't have the responsibility to that. That was my staff was supposed to do that, and they referenced that in the report. And my staff did not do it in a way that, for example, I didn't know how half the boxes got in my garage until I found out staff gathered them up, put them together, and took them to the garage in my home.
Right.
And all the stuff that was in my home was in filing cabinets that were either locked or able to be locked. It was in my house. It wasn't out in Mar-a-Lago in a public place where...
Oh, what a piece of shit. Or able to be locked. Now he's got to go and look, you have a defense that they're not going to bring this to you because you're an old man. So stop dancing on the graves of people who have memories.
And none of it was high classified. Didn't have any of that red stuff on it. You know what I mean? Around the corners? None of that. And so I wish I had paid more attention to how the documents were being moved and where. I thought they were being moved to the archives. I thought all of it was being moved. That's what I thought. Now, what was the last part of your question?
Whether a special counsel should have been appointed in this case and...
Wait, shouldn't they say, look, you can remember the second question? Come on.
In the case of your rival president, former president.
I think a special counsel should have been appointed. And the reason I think a special counsel should have been appointed is because I did not want to be in a position that they looked at Trump and weren't going to look at me, just like they looked at the vice president. And the fact is they made a firm conclusion. I did not break the law, period. Thank you all very, very much.
No, that's not what they said. They said you were too doddering old motherfucker with no good memory and you would present sympathetic to the jury.
The
heard something.
The hostage negotiations.
Comes back to the lectern. Oh boy.
I'm of the view, as you know, that the conduct of the response in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, has been over the top. I think that, as you know, initially the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanity.
I'm sorry, we got. I know. Look, you're saying a lot of stuff, but this is a press conference on your acuity and your memory. So let's play it again.
Open up the gate to allow humanitarian material. No, initially, the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in. I talked to him.
Okay.
I convinced him to open the gate.
Okay.
I talked to Bibi to open the gate on the Israeli side. I've been pushing really hard to get humanitarian assistance into Gaza. There are a lot of innocent people who are starving, a lot of innocent people who are in trouble and dying, and it's got to stop, number one. Number two, I was also in the position that I'm the guy that made the case that we have to do much more to increase the amount of material going in, including fuel, including other items.
You're the guy.
I've been on the phone with the Qataris, I've been on the phone with the Egyptians, I've been on the phone with the Saudis to get as much aid as we possibly can into Gaza. They're innocent people, innocent women and children who are also in badly in need of help. And so that's what we're pushing. And I'm pushing very hard now to deal with this hostage ceasefire because, I've been working tirelessly in this deal. How can I say this without revealing it? To lead to a sustained pause in the fighting, in the actions taking place in the Gaza Strip. And because I think if we can get the delay for that, the initial delay, I think that we would be able to extend that so that we could increase the prospect that this fighting in Gaza changes. There's also
Mexico.
negotiations. You may recall, in the very beginning, right before Hamas attacked, I was in contact with the Saudis and others to work out a deal where they would recognize Israel's right to exist, make them part of the Middle East, recognize them fully in return for certain things that the United States would commit to do. And the commitment that we were proposing to do related to two items. I'm not going to go in detail, but one of them was to deal with the protection against their arch enemy to the northwest, northeast, I should say. The second one, by providing ammunition and material for them to defend themselves. Coincidentally, that's the time frame when this broke out. I have no proof what I'm about to say, but it's not unreasonable to suspect that Hamas understood what was about to take place and wanted to break it up before it happened.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to get everybody to hold for a moment.
Okay, at one point he did, it wasn't in that one, he did actually he said something about Bo, and he got all worked up. Why is my screen all screwy now? He got all worked up about them saying that he, there we go. Wow, okay. That he didn't remember his son's, Bo Biden's something or other. Anyway, yeah. Okay, so now we're going to do a real quick one, which is the media reaction to this. You saw that, and he's a dumb fuck, okay? So now we're going to play some media reaction, and these are all, within a minute to 2 minute clips at the most. So let's start with Jake Tapper and I don't know, some weird looking guy here about this. Steve says, do you think he left because he shot his mans? I don't think he leaves for that reason, but good point. Good question. Okay, let's go here. Ready to go.
The memory lapses that President Biden is described as having in this report, this is not the first time anybody's raised issues of President Biden's acuity. And in fact, twice this week, President Biden referenced European leaders, conversations he had with them in 2021, when both those European leaders had long been dead. He confused Macron with Mitterrand. He confused Helmut Kohl with Angela Merkel. Are you really acting as if there's nothing to these issues or these concerns?
Well, I saw from the White House counsel that they disputed this recollection of the interview. And I will tell you, Jake, I was in Israel on October 7th, as you know, and President Biden was nice enough to call me. And I can tell you, this was the day before that interview, I can tell you he was sharper than anyone I've spoken to about a very complex geopolitical urgent issue.
The memory lapses that President Biden is...
let me stop this. No one is buying that. No one is buying... Okay, I don't know who this guy is speaking to, but that is bullshit. He's the most... with a guy you've... Okay, let's keep going. I got it, because I got to go meet my wife for dinner here in a pretty second. Okay, so here's a 1 minute clip here. This is MSNBC. These are all shared by Elliot, by the way. Go check him out on Twitter. Good guy. He puts this together.
That the president could also portray himself at trial as an elderly man with a poor memory who would be sympathetic to a jury. Hers description...
A neurologist and a lawyer.
Let me just finish, but I agree.
Well, no, but we kind of need to stop there. A neurologist.
You're talking about her.
Her from Trump University.
No.
And I mean, I've got to stop right here. I know we want to go on and finish this report, but I've just got to start. Ken Delanian, so bizarre, and there's so many people that immediately heard these random conclusions, irrelevant conclusions, politically charged. Trump-like.
I will say they are irrelevant. They should not have been brought into a charging document of whether we should be bringing this to trial or not. It's like, did he do it or not? Now let's fucking get this guy in there. Let's charge him or not. Let's throw his out and let's throw Trump's out. This is so stupid with these documents.
Trump-like ramblings, who, first of all, wondered why in the world he would put that in the report, his neurological assessment of Joe Biden. And secondly, why Merrick Garland would release garbage like that in the Justice Department report. Can you give us any insight? Because it sure sounds like James Comey in 2016, who July couldn't indict Hillary Clinton legally, so he decided to hold a press conference and indict her politically.
Okay, first of all, he could have indicted her legally. They just chose not to. So Joe Scarborough, piece of shit, but that's what we expect. running cover for this guy. Okay, here's the same guy we just saw. This Danielson guy. This is a quick 2-minute clip here. This is remember he just talked to Joe Biden, and it was the most intelligent person he had ever spoken to that week.
The credibility of witnesses matters. The credibility of the potential defendant is something altogether very different, especially when one volunteers for an interview, because he's not going to testify. A jury is not going to end up having to analyze Joe Biden, and especially when you're saying that the charges or the evidence does not meet the charges, that is completely gratuitous and completely unnecessary. My understanding as well, Joe, is that during these 5 hours, President Biden went through in great detail many conversations that he had with various other people from years and years ago. So he cherry-picked a couple of examples that perhaps we don't know, perhaps are in context, perhaps are out of context, related to very sensitive issues such as his son, really just to bash him, just to impugn him. And it is excessive, it is gratuitous. And the last thing I'll say, Joe, is it's wrong. I have had a number of conversations with President Biden over.
I just want to say, and we'll let him finish here, which is, and by the way, I'm not a Trump defender, but this is the media, and Steve is so right here. The corporate press is a joke, and they have lost control. It's beautiful. Absolutely. And what I mean by that is, remember when the 25th Amendment, to say president's incompetent, was being floated about, all the things they said about Trump over the time, they would get a psychiatrist, a psychologist to come on to psychoanalyze him from a distance, having never, which is totally against what they're supposed to be able to do, analyze him just simply being on. And so these people will do that of one person, and then someone who's clearly, and this is the gaslighting that they try to do, clearly mentally incapacitated, they're fine with.
Couple of years, including on October 7th, the day before this interview, when I was in Israel, and he called me. And his mastery and understanding of the geopolitical situation on the ground in Israel and in the surrounding region was remarkable. He was recounting to me all the various different things they had done in the first couple hours of the war. He was completely on top of,
which we found out to be completely false. So he can have said whatever he wanted to at the time.
Everything that was going on. And his experience, because of his age and his wisdom, has been invaluable to this country as we have navigated through the Russia-Ukraine war and now the Middle East.
Costly, as we heard from Putin, costly and stupid. So fuck you, whoever you were. Okay, I'm cruising through here. I've got like 2 or 3 left. Let's see this one. This is maybe not quite as impressive, but CNN panel, the guy going down here with this
he undercut 2 of his biggest messages. The adults are back in charge by sort of being dismissive of, yes, he was exonerated. He's not going to be convicted or tried for this, but there's some really damning pieces of information here. He had deliberations around Afghan war plans with him. He spoke to a biographer about classified documents who didn't have clearance. This showed a decent level of reckless mishandling of classified information.
He said in that he didn't.
He said that he didn't. So I think there was a dismissiveness to the seriousness of this. And then on the other hand, they were using this bizarre line to say he stepped away from an international crisis, the biggest attack on our ally Israel since the Holocaust, to go deal with a self-inflicted investigation by the Department of Justice. How is that supposed to inspire confidence? I don't know why he went back out. He already said most of this in Virginia today, but this is becoming a 5-alarm fire for the White House.
Mexico? Where did that come from? I mean, that's the only thing anyone's going to remember from this.
Okay, so look, we got at least a little bit of a competent reaction there. Let's go to another one with Jolton Joe Scarborough and his I don't know, what did Trump say about his wife? She was a funny looking woman. Anyway, I think he said something about her plastic surgery. Is this live, Minder? Yes, it is. Okay, let's go here. One more clip here. This is 2 minutes. Do I want to play this whole thing? Yes, we're going to get through this here. I got one more after this, and then we're done. And I got to go meet my wife in about 15 minutes.
Literally,
for dinner.
before we started the program, I was saying to Chuck Rosenberg sitting here.
I think, Steven, who is that guy? I think it was Mark Tubin. Okay, I think that's who it was. I think it's Tubin. Wasn't he the guy that was jerking it on a Zoom call? I think that was him. I'm not going to go back, but you can double check that.
Can you explain to me how this is different from what Jim Comey did in what we think of as in 2016 as Comey won his first intercession?
Oh yeah,
in the election in the case you were referring to in July, I think of 2016 when he did what you just said. And I like you, am old enough to remember when prosecutors either charged someone and issued a charging document, or they issued a declension, and the declension was one sentence which says we decline to prosecute. Chuck, I think, is going to talk about something that I don't know as much about. The detail of it is how the difference between back in those days when we had the independent counsel statute and what we have now, where we have special counsels and what the regulations are and what they have to do. I will say that there's no doubt in my mind.
Look at this on screen, what they have. Presidential charges, Trump 91, Biden 0. That, first of all, do we talk about immunity as a president? Biden is president. You can't, you motherfuckers are so bad.
That this special prosecutor could have written the same report
Mexican food
without using
reminder.
These words. Elderly man with a poor memory.
Yes.
I'm like you, I'm a simple country journalist. I can find a lot of different ways to say this.
Yeah, you know what?
Without
I'm a
saying
simple
something
country
like that.
lawyer.
Yeah.
John, I'm a simple country lawyer, and I know. What's the headline? What should the headline from this report be? Not indicted.
Not guilty. Right.
Not the evidence to indict him. Yeah. It's not there. And the clear differences, as he wrote, between Trump and Biden. That should be.
And I would have thought,
wait, hold on, John. Hold on, John. Do you think that this guy is so naive? Do you think this guy is so stupid? Do you guys think this guy is so clueless that he didn't know by putting words in that Donald Trump would love for him to put in there, that wasn't going to be the headline for the New York Post, that wouldn't be on every... The guy knew. He's a Trumper who knew.
Right.
So why in the world would the Justice Department allow that dicta to be in there? It's gratuitous. Well, and he knows it's gratuitous.
Okay, so here's why they would allow this to be in. By the way, I think there's a lot, and so they make some points there, and they're all up in arms at it there, and I'm like trashing the media because they're pieces of shit, and they can't see that Biden is losing his mind and has been for quite some time. But what's interesting is that there is probably a push, and a likely good one, from a lot of these Democrats who are scared that he is going to be the president of the United States. So we need to push him out. Now, the problem is you get Kamala Harris. That's maybe more scary. So I just like to see it all burn down. Last clip.
The president quoted where
I can't play the whole thing,
refers to him as a
we'll
well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. What is the word elderly doing there? And poor memory, what is the test of that? Might that be Donald Trump saying, I don't recall 400 times under oath in the same deposition? Is that a good test of it? The idea that witnesses over a 40-year discussion, don't remember everything, or that someone who graduates from college in June can't tell you where the diploma is in September. That seems to be a condition that this special prosecutor doesn't understand in the human mind. So I'm going to be fascinated when I can get into all these hundreds of pages to see what is it that makes you stress the lack of memory in this particular case, where you have this completely cooperative witness, and there has never been a witness under oath anywhere being questioned over a period of years of that witness's life where they don't say, I do not recall. It is impossible to ask witnesses questions where they answer will not be, I don't recall. And if you don't get that response, it just means you didn't ask enough questions.
Can I speak just on that? Because I had the same thought. It's fairly standard lawyering to advise people, even when in doubt or you think you might remember. If you can credibly say, I don't recall about something, that's a standard legal advice. And it has nothing to do with the age of the person giving the deposition.
When you're under oath, you can't lie. If you do recall, you have to say that you can, but if you can't...
Exactly. Well, that's the whole point, right, Rachel? That basically, because of those standards, the extra burden that you don't want to get anything wrong means you err on the side of saying, I don't recall, I don't remember, unless you really specifically do. And if there's a thing that might seem minor and you're not sure and you're being asked about a very specific aspect of it, like, was it in the...
I can't handle that. And the reason so we're done. The reason I can't handle that anymore is because they're stupid. And their problem is like he's decaying. It's so obvious, and it's okay to say so. You're the press. I get it. Yes, we say things. I sometimes don't remember things. That totally happens all the time, and we have to understand that that's part of the case too. But there is a reason why this DOJ seemed to think that it was so important to bring up these facts. Let's talk about Fox & Sons. Go to foxandsons.com for all your coffee needs. 18% off of orders of 25 or more if you use the code REVIEW. Look at this. I got this new Fox & Sons coffee mug. This really is my favorite one. It's like this the ceramic. It's like a blue. It is fantastic, Steve. So I really appreciate this. I've been blowing through your coffee like every day. That's why I'm able to stay up here. The coffee did not help the last episode, the Kill Pod. I'm going to send a bag to some participants on there because I told you I would give prizes, but no one should get, the only people that should get prizes is those who watch the show. It was so bad, and it's not Zach's fault. I blame Andy, I blame me, Dickie, and Leighton as those ones here. So yes, 18% off, so of $25 or more. So please go in there and check that out, everybody. Who is paying Fox and I do give Steve some money because I love his stuff so much. I bought this mug and some coffee. He had a deal and I jumped on it. I'm thrilled with this mug, Steve. It's absolutely dynamic, fantastic. And with that, we're going to go out with a little Depeche Mode. Look, folks, all I want to say is we had an issue here. We had the 14th Amendment, which sucks. We need to repeal it. That's what I'm saying about that one. We had this Biden. We have this Trump things. We have SCOTUS. We have Putin. It's craziness going on there. But that's what it is. By the way, go look at on Twitter there. There is this song. I'll stop all of a sudden. I'm going to play a different one. Go on Twitter there. Check out my episode. I think it was one. I don't know what it was. But DL Cummings posted it out there, and it's my breakdown of Dave. Joe Jorgensen, she was on Peter Bet David, whatever his name is, and she said, oh yeah, Dave's encouraging you to go out and rape women. I do a breakdown of that. I pull his old show off of the Gas Digital Network, and I do a breakdown of that, and I encourage you to do it. Thank you everybody for joining us. Have a good weekend. Maybe I'll do a surprise show tomorrow. My wife's got plans. Maybe I'll just break in and do it, or maybe I'll do a podcast about cycling on my cycling podcast. Out.
Okay, I'm leaving now. Bye, guys.
But she's back.
And now.
Chick-fil-A is completely overrated. It's not that good. I prefer Zaxby's. I prefer Popeyes.
Takes a tough man to make a tender forecast, Nick. And I guess that's me. Keep fucking that chicken.
Should I vote for Dick Cheney on the Libertarian Party? Do I have an obligation to vote for Dick Cheney?
I would say so.
Yes.
Did it work for those people?
No, it never does. I mean, these people somehow delude themselves into thinking it might, but it might work for us.
That one dude was like, not a podcast, I can't find it anywhere, and they don't have video.
Oh, yeah, Peter Janke, yeah.
Yeah, I blocked him.
I'll do it. If he unblocks me, I'll...
He'll buy your shirt if you unblock him, Bert.
He's a wigger.
Yeah, nothing cooler than a 49-year-old wigger.
Yeah,
I just started live streaming. Cut me some slack. I'm pretty high tech for a boomer. But anyways,
boomer.